So the next is, let's talk about cost classification. This is really, really useful for understanding. You're going to get so much more of this in the rest of your classes. The idea of fixed versus variable costs. You get it in business calculus. You get it in economics. You're going to get it again in cost accounting. Yeah, this is just in finance. You have to understand these concepts. So we have direct costs, indirect costs, fixed costs, variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that don't change when activity changes. What does that mean? Let's say I buy a factory, and in order to manufacture goods, the factory cost me $100 million. The goods cost me $1 per unit to make. No matter what happens, I bought the factory. That's a $100 million cost. Nothing I can do can change that cost. If I make 1 million items or I make no items, I still spent 100 million on a factory, right? That's a fixed cost. No matter what I do, that's not going to change. That has a flat line, right? It's just a B-intercept here. Just would be 100 million, it's flat. Nothing happens. If activity's down here, nothing changes. While the variable costs are the units I produce. If it's $1 per unit, it will go up evenly over time in proportion to activity changes. This is simplified. As the graph changes, you can't have fixed costs and variable costs remain constant, but this is just the idea of the behavior of the different types of costs. There's also direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are costs that are traceable to a single cost object, while indirect costs are costs that cannot be traced to a single cost object. So what's something we can trace? And when we talk about cost objects, so let's say we're building a computer, right? We can trace the labor used to build that computer directly to the computer that was built. You can potentially trace the machine hours directly, maybe not the machine hours directly to the computer, but maybe we can trace all the materials. Oh, we use this silicon chip directly to the computer. But indirect costs are a little more difficult to trace, right? Or not even possible to trace. So an idea here would be maybe your overhead for the factory, your electricity for the factory. How would you allocate that to a computer? We really can't trace that directly to a computer, right? The example we gave here is maintenance expenditure benefiting 2 or more departments. So you're building, if you're maintaining the machinery, or you have someone maintaining the machinery of the machinery building computers, but also the machinery that also builds phones. How would you classify that labor? That labor really can't be directly traced to the laptop. So that's all we're talking about here is, can we trace it? The idea of traceable costs are generally direct labor and direct materials. Those are your traceable costs. Any labor that went directly into building a good, and any materials that went directly into a good. Anything that can't go directly into a good is indirect. So that's it from understanding costs. Just learn these definitions and then practice your examples and your homework.